Hi, my name is Susan Pannell. I'm here because I have a son who's 12 years old with autism and complex medical needs. He actually has a P10 mutation that has caused his autistic issues that he has. And I would love to share with you our story. I'm so blessed to be able to be a part of this Best Beginnings faculty. And I'm here just to share my story with you, hoping that it will help for you to see a parent's perspective in this journey on an autism diagnosis. So to start off, our little guy was born at 34 and a half weeks, which was just a crazy experience. He actually was in the NICU for 2 weeks. I'm so thankful for the new NICU procedures, but back then you didn't get to hold your baby. They stayed in the NICU. You got to see him 2 or 3 visits a day. So I'm so thankful that's changed. But then he was out of the NICU for about 2 weeks and had to go back in. He was one of those wimpy white boys with reflux, and we just had a hard time breathing and feeding without destatting. And then he actually had 3 surgeries the first year. He had a nevus that had to be removed. It was quite large, and so it had to be done in 2 surgeries. And then our 3rd surgery, he had his PDA that was not closed correctly. So in that first year, it was really tough. He had multiple medical things happen that year and found out that he had some mitochondrial issues too. At the time, we didn't do any treatments because they didn't really know what to do for them. We just knew he had a bunch of labs that were abnormal. So about 2 years old, he crashed. He lost a lot of language. He was banging his head. He had his stool turned really south to where it was really hard to for him to potty train. He had diarrhea a lot, and if the stool ever touched his skin, it would give him really bad diaper rash that was super hard to treat. So at that point, our pediatrician, who has been amazing, has been our lifeline through the whole part of everything that he has been through, decided that it was really time for us to look into some autism testing. So we went and signed up for multiple places, because back then it would take a lot of time to get diagnosed. And the wait list was anywhere from 1 year to 2 years. So we went ahead and got on multiple wait lists. And I had a lot of parents that I reached out to, and they all said, go ahead and start OT and PT and speech, whatever he can qualify for, go ahead and start the therapy. Doesn't matter what the diagnosis is. I'm so thankful for that, because we did not waste any time, and we immediately started getting him some support, which was so helpful. And then I think we saw our first doctor right when he was about almost 3 years old. And unfortunately, the news we got from that doctor was very disheartening. She had told us he would continue to get worse, that we needed to see a psychologist for a full neuropsych eval, but thought he was on the spectrum, that he would probably be in a group home when he was a teenager, wouldn't go to college. It was really hard news to hear as a parent, very hopeless for sure. I went home and cried for 3 days, and then I decided, you know what? We took 10 years to have this child. We lost 6 pregnancies. He was our 7th pregnancy. That I was going to fight as hard as I could and find out, because he really was okay before he crashed and had language, and we just needed to find out how to do that. So we actually sought every pediatrician we could that had a child with autism. I actually learned how to research on PubMed and started just researching the trends in autism, understood how that worked. I had a husband that actually passed away from, he had a stroke, and at the ER, I had told them that his dad had a stroke, and I thought he was having a stroke. I had taught CPR and first aid for 15 years, and he had most of the symptoms. Unfortunately, the doctor didn't agree, sent him home. And within about 4 hours, the whole paresis had set in. And by the time I got him back to another hospital, he died 2 weeks later. So I learned from that experience to be a better advocate for my family and for my son. So I learned kind of how to talk the language, and took classes on genetics and other various things so I could understand what the doctors were telling me about my child, and then in turn being able to speak to them intelligently and make them respect what I was saying, and understand that the words that I was telling them were actually great words to hear and would actually help them with the diagnosis of Ben. We actually ran into a doctor named Lane Rutledge, which will continue to be my hero. I was so sad when she passed away, but we actually ran into her when he was 4, and she said, "Hey, he's a P10 kid. Let me test him for that. I'm pretty sure that's what he has." And that was so helpful. We had been to lots of specialists, but when he actually got a diagnosis and put us in a group, it really helped us to connect with other specialists at Boston Children's and other places. So we have seen 12 specialists since he's been born, which is a lot. But through all of this experience, what I've learned is that there's a ton of hope for kids on the spectrum. So what our child looks like now versus what we are told at 2 years old. We actually got an official diagnosis at 3.5 of Asperger's with autistic traits. And, the hope of what he looks like now was not something that was, even as a parent at that point, was something that we didn't even realize that could have happened, to be honest. So Ben right now is not in any special education. He is in one of the over the mountain schools. He is doing very well. He has friends. Actually, we had a bunch of friends over yesterday, which is so encouraging. We do have struggles and other things that we're struggling with, but for the most part, everybody kind of does. So we feel very blessed. But the therapy that we got, the early intervention that we are so thankful that we started, our pediatrician and the other people that helped us through this whole journey have actually helped us have this successful child that is going to make it. He is going to college. He is going to live at our house as a teenager, as much as he wants to drive me crazy. But that's just teenagers, right? So the autism is not going to put him, make us put him in a group home. We have done really great, and it's really the community, and then all these therapists and amazing doctors we've had during this whole journey. So before I wrap up, I just want to tell you thank you for what you do. What you do matters. Being engaged with these families matter, following up with them, because they're frightened and scared, and it's just so overwhelming to hear the news. But if you can get them connected to other families and get them with the right therapy, these kids will grow, and it's so encouraging. So thank you for what you do. I know it's super hard, but we as parents we really appreciate what you're doing, and I just want to say thank you from everybody, from the bottom of our hearts. Thanks so much for allowing me to share my story, and if you ever need anything from me, please contact me. I'll be glad to help.